There we go. Okay. So welcome to the VACN, which is VA Claims Navigator. I greatly appreciate this as a nonprofit. And so these classes that we hold live are always free. And we will start sharing memberships that you're able to access as well. So during this class, I ask that no questions are asked. After, we'll have a question period where we're just asking questions on what we learned today. After I get done recording, the great thing about coming to these live classes is that you'll be able to share any information as well as ask any questions outside of what we learned. So it's kind of an open communication. So this is the reason why you should come to those live classes. So the today what we're going to be discussing is the hidden VA math strategy that most veterans miss. And please jot your questions. The other thing, please, in the chat box, we have shared some links that includes Facebook links, YouTube links, as well as the calculator that we're gonna that I'm gonna share with you throughout the class. Whoops. All right. Again, we're nonprofit. This training is for educational purposes only. This is not legal advice, and we are not accredited VA representatives. So, our course content, what VA math really is, examples of the VA math, domino, bilateral effect, and the whole body thinking. So, just short and simple, a veteran does not usually lose because they only have low ratings. They often lose a lot of that VA rating that a lot of times are like, I should have more because they don't understand how the VA math actually works. They're not thinking about secondary conditions, bilateral factors, or even a whole body system strategy. So that is what we're really going to be focusing on today. And so it's not just simply adding ratings together. If anybody here knows, if you have multiple ratings, you're like, wait a minute, 50-50 equals 100. Why do I have 70 or 80? Right? So this is just really short information. And we're going to go in depth on this. So if a veteran is rated at 50% for one condition, the VA treats that veteran as 50% disabled and 50% efficient or abled. So if the veteran gets a 30% condition, the VA does not add 50 and 30, that would equal 80. Instead, it would be remainder of that 50% to the 30%. So very confusing, but let's get into it. All right, example. 100% able. Okay, and I want to say this. I really dislike the word disability or disabled because in our minds we often think unable to do something, right? That's not necessarily the way that VA looks at it. It is based upon how your life is affected, okay, or what the VA decides. So most people say, "Oh, well, I'm not disabled. I'm not in a wheelchair. I can, I can work." Well, there's also some limitations to that. So I don't like the VA disabled concept because a lot of times we don't feel like, oh, we're not disabled in that sense. So I want you to remember that. So 100% able body, that means you have no rating or you might have some zeros. So they're going to start with 100% able body. Now you get a 50% rating, let's say for migraines. That disability is now 50%. So you have a remaining able body of 50%. So 100 minus 50 equals 50%. Okay. Now, now you're at 50% for your migraines. Okay. Now let's say you add a condition for 30%. Let's say that 30% is GERD, okay, heartburn. So that second percentage is going to go apply 30% to the remaining 50% that the VA has claimed that you were able. So 30% of 50% is now 15%. So your first disability at 50%, your second contribution, which is that 15%, now you have a total disability of 65%. The VA is going to round it to 70%. Okay. So now let's look at the third condition. Now you're coming back for a third condition. All right. The VA says you are 65% disabled. Okay. So you're going to apply the 20% of apply the 20% to the remaining 35%. So I think I messed up. Oh, no. 20% of 65% is 7%. I think this is 25 of the 35. I miscalculated. So that's 7%. So your new total is 65 plus 7 would give you 72%. Okay, so they're going to still round it to 70. This is why a lot of times you guys will win a rating and it does not change the actual compensated rating. So you still technically have, a higher rating, but because they round it for your pay, that is why you don't see a difference in your pay and you're still at 70% paid. I hope this is making sense. So your combined equals your previous total plus your C time, so combined times 100 minus previous total divided by 100. This is where the math gets really frustrating for people who are not very mathy. All right, so the way the VA always applies the highest rating first. That's because the larger is the first deduction and it leaves the less remaining efficiency, which slightly reduces the impact of the later conditions. So that is why you're going to start with always the highest and then go down that way. So something I want you guys to remember is that VA math is compounding loss, not additional. Each rating applies only to what is remaining. Your final number is always rounded to the nearest 10, and smaller ratings later have less impact than the earlier ones. If two veterans can have the same exact medical problems and still end up with different ratings. So the only one claims the obvious diagnosis. Let's say you have a back condition. Then the other one might do the obvious diagnosis plus the connected conditions. One understands bilateral factor. One understands mental health and neurological add-ons. One documents symptoms in a way that matches the CFR criteria. And this is where a lot of veterans, I want to say they fail. They don't understand the CFR. And then one misses secondary conditions entirely. And this is why that one back diagnosis, let's say degenerative disc disease, it might stay at 20%. But a second person can go, oh, well, I understand the domino effect, and we'll talk about that. So, did you know? This was very interesting. Did you know that losing one toe can create a domino effect throughout your whole entire body? This is called biomechanics. So, biomechanics is a way that your body moves as a connected system because we're connected in as a being, right? One thing can mess up your whole body. So, if you lose a toe, it changes your gait. That puts ankle stress on your ankle. That's going to then create knee pain. It's going to then create hip pain, back problems, neck pain, sleep issues, migraines, depression, IBS. So it is a domino effect, one part of your body. Now, of course, if somebody who loses a toe, if they don't have all these problems, then of course don't claim them. But if you do say, oh, wow, I do have all of these, or I have parts of these, then of course you should look at those and you should claim those. And the idea is when you lose your toe, you're going to walk, right? And it's interesting because you don't think about your toes as being that important. Like, oh, well, a toe lost. I had a friend who was mowing the grass in her flip-flops and the mower, she fell basically and it cut off all of her toes. So that change is going to affect everything else. It's going to affect the way you walk. It's going to affect your gait. It's going to probably start causing some chronic pain. And so over time, it's going to have a ripple effect on your body. And that's really like how the whole system works. And this is all backed by science. This is not, a type of theory or conspiracy theory, anything like that. It's the way that your body is going to compensate. And so this is why there's so many secondaries. A lot of people forget about the secondaries. They'll say, well, that's not caused by my military time. Well, it could be if you understand how your body works. Um, so whenever the VA rates a condition, it's based on how the body is affected. It's not just one, it's not separate. And a lot of times the other thing is people will say, I have a client right now and he's like, yes, so I have a rating for my lower back. And I tried to put in for migraines, but I wasn't seeing while on active duty, but I tried to do direct service. Well, the VA is going to deny that because you don't actually have records. And this particular client doesn't qualify for Terra. So they don't have any way to acknowledge it was direct service. However, if this client decides that he wants to see how like that lower back has messed up everything else, it can affect the migraine. So that can put on the stress of the body. So this is why it's really, really important to understand how the whole body works and understand all these different parts. And this is the domino effect. It is when one service-connected problem can create a multiple ratable conditions. So, an example, a back condition may lead to a lumbar strain or degenerative disc disease, left leg and right leg radiculopathy. Now, that radiculopathy basically means that tingling, numbness that shoots down your legs. It can alter your gait, your knee pain worsens the knee conditions, ankle issues, sleep impairment from chronic pain, depression or anxiety from chronic pain, migraines from neck issues, TBI, stress, or medication side effects. And yes, you can claim medication side effects. One of the biggest medication side effects is actually ED for men. So that is also something you can apply for. And then GERD from pain medicines can also happen. This is really important to have when we're looking at secondaries. This is really important to have those nexus statements. It's really important how you talk about those conditions as well. So the biggest thing I want you to take from right now we've learned is one condition opens a door to a whole chain of additional conditions. All right, let's look at our starting condition. So a veteran has a service-connected lumbar spine condition. So that one thing, that lumbar spine condition can result in depression, often called SSD, somatic syndrome disorder, migraines, left and right lower radiculopathy, your left knee strain, your right knee strain, left ankle limitation, tinnitus, and GERD. Yes, one thing can lead to all of these and more. Here's another example. So the VA combines the highest rating, going back to the ratings, using this 38 CFR 4.25. Depression 70%, because remember, we start off the highest. Migraines at 50, lumbar spine at 40, left and right radiculopathy 20%. We're going to talk about bilateral factor in a moment, but that would add in bilateral factor. Left knee and right knee, that's another bilateral factor. Your ankle, your tinnitus, and GERD. And this person would be at 100%. Again, migraines plus depression or PTSD. So you start with a 70, veteran is 30% efficient. 50% of 30 is 15. Now we combine those, you have 85, it's going to get rounded up to 90. Add the lumbar spine at 40%. So the remaining 15% would be 40% of 15% is 6. So now we have 85 plus that 6 is 91. We're still rounded, getting paid at 90%. When we start adding all of those in, we start, we really start getting there, right? But this is why so many people get frustrated. Now we're going to bring in your leg conditions. So we have left, right radiculopathy, left, right knee, and your left ankle. So these are paired for extremities. So there's going to be a bilateral factor under the 38 CFR, 4.26. So basically, you're going to add additional 10% of the combined value is going to be added. So you would do the 20 plus 20 is 36. The 36 plus the 10 is 42 point. I'm sorry, it would be 36, and then the 2 point. Yeah, sorry, 36 plus 10, 42.4, because you're adding the 10%. And then you do the 42.4, add the 10, which would be 48.16. We continue to do that till we get the raw combined bilateral factor of all of those conditions is 53.3. Now you're going to apply that bilateral factor, and it's going to be rounded to 59%. Hope this is making sense. I'm not a math person, so this took me a little bit to really learn. So then we have 59 into that existing 991. But remember, we only have 9% left to be able to, that 9% is the whole body, or the able body. So 59% of 9 is 5.3. Isn't that crazy? 59% is only 5.3. So that 91 plus the 5.3 is 96.31. Now we have 100%. That is a domino effect. Hopefully this is making sense. If you have questions, write them down. So, a lot of times people say, well, I don't want to claim tinnitus. It's only 10%. I don't want to claim that it's only 10%. Well, it's important that we start claiming all, because 10% is still worth something. There's been times where I've had a client that only needed 10% to get to 100. So when we have a claim that is already 84 to 94 in the range, even 10% can get you to that next level. So at 94, if you have a 94 raw rating, if you add another 10% with the remaining efficiency of 6, 10% of 6 is 0.6, 94.6 gets rounded to 95. And then that 95 now becomes 100. I hope this is making sense. Now, a lot of times this is one that a lot of people miss, mental health and migraines. Mental health is the highest rated, one of the highest rating that most veterans struggle with. And of course, nobody wants to admit that they have depression or anxiety or PTSD or adjustment disorder. I get it. SSD is another one, somatic syndrome. And that can go from 0, 10, 30, 50, 70, and 100%. So this is under the ratings 38 CFR 4.130. So unlike physical conditions, mental health is not rated by diagnosis or range of motion alone. It is rated on occupational and social impairment. So a lot of times veterans, we struggle with irritability. We don't like to be around people. We don't want to travel. We don't want to go to big events. We are short-tempered. We have road rage. And we might choose a job because we don't want to be around certain people. Like I know a lot of truck drivers who are like, I'm a veteran. I don't want to work with anybody else. I can't stand people. I have to be alone. And so their job is affected. And so this can all, this is how the mental health is rated. And so oftentimes, here's the reality is oftentimes mental health are either underrated, they're underreported, or not claimed at all. I would say most veterans, I'm going to just take my husband, talk about my husband for a moment. He was rated 30% for his mental health, for his PTSD. And that was so low, especially when he first got out, because 30% is limited impact. But he was flipping over his officers' desks. He was yelling at people. He started to drink a lot because he didn't deal with his PTSD when he got back from combat, or when he left the drill field. And so he was so scared to talk about how he actually struggles. And so I was like, wow, 30%. I now know, I'm like, wow, you should have been like 70% because there was a lot there. And so a lot of times people also, especially, we just don't know how to talk about these things. We don't want to look like we're crazy. We don't want to go into the loony bin, right? So a lot of people just don't know how to advocate for what is actually going on, or they don't think it's as bad as others perceive it or understand it. And so having a spouse, like if are in and out of relationships, you've been divorced, um, your current spouse, or even your children, they'll be able to see things that you don't want to see, or you don't see. And so having somebody to help you understand that is can also be very helpful. Of course, I say never lie, steal, or cheat. Just understand exactly where you are so that way you can get the rating that you actually deserve. And listen, if a veteran is only 30%, hey, then that should be where they are at. A lot of times veterans only want to claim physical conditions and they ignore the emotional and psychological impact. So chronic pain leads to depression, anxiety, sleep disturbance, isolation, and irritability. So if your condition affects your mind, it can affect your rating. Migraines are another. I had a client like have migraines, was on medication for years. And they were like, oh, it's not military related. And we started talking, and that client was definitely um, one at 50%. But it's sometimes we don't think about migraines. I know somebody who was like, well, everybody has migraines, don't they? No, no, they don't. So migraines are rated based on the frequency and severity. That doesn't mean you have to have them every day. You might have them once or twice a week. Uh, if they are prostrating means that you're going into bed, you're going into a dark room, you are like staying away from all sound and all light. So that means you are laying down because they're that bad. So it could be based upon that and whether they impact your work. If you've had to leave work or or you choose a dark workplace or something like that, you could be at 50%, which is the highest rating. So again, it's really important to understand these ratings, and you can look at that under the 38 CFR 4.124A. That diagnostic code is 8100. This is why it's so important to be educated in their conditions that you have that you truly struggle with and the CFR. Because if you don't know the CFR, you have no idea what the ratings are and where you're supposed to be at. Now, this is what I say a whole body thinking. We just kind of talked about the domino effect, but you have to think, okay, what else is causing me to have issues? So don't just ask, do I have a back diagnosis? Does it shoot down either leg? Is there any numbness or tingling? Is there any weakness? Is there a gait change? Does it affect your knees or ankles? Sleep disturbance, depression or irritability or anxiety from your chronic pain? Any type of medications? Work limitations? Do you need to sit, stand, or lie down frequently? I had one client who had a diagnosis and not back. He had a different type of IBS type of issue. And he was scared to travel. He had so much anxiety leaving his house. He had so much anxiety about what he ate. Like he was a very, very anxious because anytime he ate something, he could be extremely sick and be, having to go to the bathroom. It's very, very bad. And so it affected everything in his life. And so when I talked to him about that, he's like, I had no idea that this all could have been as a secondary to my IBS condition. But when we started talking about all that, it all started making sense. And so that's that whole body thinking. Example, PTSD. And PTSD is not just combat, guys and gals. And PTSD has a lot of people think, oh, PTSD is for combat veterans only. No, PTSD is post traumatic. Okay, so yes, there's a combat. There's also MST, which is military sexual trauma. But there's also things like if you're in a car wreck. My daughter um, was in a house fire. More than likely, she has PTSD. Especially because if she hears loud sounds, her heart rate drops and she gets really scared because of fire. So panic attacks, sleep impairments, migraines from stress, IBS, GI systems, relationship breakdowns, trouble adapting to work, memory issues, anger, isolation, suspiciousness, or depression can all be part of that PTSD. Um, I know one of my clients, every time he would go, if he had if something trigger him, he would have a panic attack, but then he would have to go to the bathroom because it caused like irritable bowel syndrome. So that's when basically your body wants to go in flight and fight, and it's going to empty out everything it has. So that was part of his claim. You have a neck condition. Okay, well, do you have migraines or headaches? Do you have upper extremity radiculopathy? Do you have shoulder compensation injury? Is there sleep problems? Is there concentration problems? All of that from one condition. So remember, whole body approach. If you don't know the whole body, talking to somebody is definitely something you could do. I did link my information down below so you can talk to me one-on-one. Our um or somebody else if you already work with somebody else. Our nonprofit does not do any one-on-ones. This is just classes and videos and such. So remember, combined ratings are not simple addition. Bilateral factor can increase. Some symptoms cannot be rated twice. This is called pyramiding. So oftentimes you'll see this with IBS and GERD. They cannot be, that's like going to fall under one. You cannot do, for instance, PTSD and depression. That would be considered pyramiding. You're only going to get one. So that's another thing to think about whenever you're applying for conditions. You want to make sure that you're not doing any kind of pyramiding because you're going to get denied. If evidence is between two rating levels, the higher may be applied if the disability picture is more clearly approximates that level. Okay, so this is where it's really important to advocate for yourself and learn what that advocation is. And then reasonable doubt is to resolve any favor of the client. So basically, under 38 CFR 4.3, if the rater has two things and they're not sure which is like, well, both of these can, let's say 50 or one doctor says 50% and one doctor says 70%. And the rater is supposed to give you the higher rating. Or same with the like if you have a nexus statement that says that your migraines are due to your neck condition, and then you have this CMP examiner says no, they're supposed to give the reasonable doubt in favor of the veteran. So knowing these laws and these rules are important for veterans to know too, because you have to know what you are entitled to. All right, so right now I'm going to open it up for any questions about the math. Oh, let me show you guys really quickly. Let me share something else with you, I should say. Where is it at? Okay, share screen. All right, this is on VACN, so VA Claims Navigator.org/VA TAC ratings TAC calculator. So here you can go on here and you can, if you do like your left arm and your right arm, so it gives you the raw rating of 21%. it rounds down to the nearest 10. So you get that 20% is what you would get. You could add your dependents. So if you're like, hey, I have two kids that are under 18 and I am married, it will update. Actually, it will not update for this one because it's a 20%. Let's add a 30%. So you get paid for your dependents after you hit 30%. So 30%, you get paid for your dependents. So this would round it up and then give you your estimated monthly payment. Now, I did update this for 2026 pay, so this should be accurate. And then it also says here it matched the bilateral factor. You can go through this and then you can add in your name, and this will email you your results, or you can always come back here. Sometimes you can play with it and say, how much more do I get to my next rating? All right. Any questions so far about what we discussed in this class? If you do, just open it up and ask away.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, when I retired back in 2005,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't claim for anything because I'm one of those individuals that didn't claim for. I only claimed for one thing, and that was
Right.
my my arm that had tendonitis, and they want to operate, and I said no. So they went ahead and treated it. But before that, I had an ankle problem. I twisted my ankle when I was on military service, but it never got healed properly. Would that be a domino effect?
No. So you said your ankle and your arm?
Well, it's my left side, my left ankle, and then it goes to my leg, to my knee, then to my knee, to my hip, and
Oh,
then from my hip to my shoulder.
absolutely. There's a whole body thinking. Absolutely. So, first, you were going to want to get that ankle rated. And so the biggest thing, since you weren't here for our last classes, the biggest thing is you need to have medical evidence for everything. And so as long as you have current medical evidence. Now, since you retired, the other thing is that um, you need to get 50% in order to keep both your VA rating or the compensation that you get from the VA and your retirement. So that whole body thinking that you're doing that domino effect, absolutely. Ankle, knee, hip, back, it goes all the way up.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody have any other questions? No? All right, guys. So what I'm going to do is I am going to end this recording, and then you guys can stay. And if you have any other questions that is outside of this teaching, also want to congratulate Joshua. He was able to get to 80%. He just found out. So congratulations, Joshua, for getting to 80%. That is awesome.